Who here wants to remember old times of pompous barons chucking hissy fits at losing a game of chess? Well, I'm Grandmaster Max Illingworth, and I will be telling you about this fantastic story that did actually happen in real life. This isn't like Marshall's myth of the board being showered with gold coins. Before I do though, I want to let you know that this game here is actually one that I showed in the first ever paid chess lesson I did. I'd been helping people at chess for years before that, but this was the first lesson I actually got paid for doing the coaching as such. You could say it started my chess business in a way. So, but this time I felt, well, okay, what game am I going to teach my student? I was like a little bit nervous because I didn't know much about him. And well, actually in the first lesson I did go through some of his games to help him, but then the next lesson he didn't have any games to go through. So I decided, well, I will show him the story of this Baron that I told you about and how Steinitz was able to beat him. It's a pretty famous game, so definitely one that you're going to learn a lot from. Even if you already know the game, I think you will get a lot out of it. So let's begin. The game between Steinitz as white against von Bardeleben, Hastings A95, started e4, e5. Because in the 9th century you didn't play e4, e5, you were a pansy. So we had knight f3, knight c6, and then we had bishop to c4, Italian game. And interestingly enough, Steinitz played it the aggressive way with c3. He didn't play like the modern grandmasters trying to avoid a fight with d3 and say, yeah, I'll get the pieces out and start thinking on move 50. Instead, he went d4. And after e takes d4 now, those of you who are my students and have studied my very powerful opening repertoires for white will know that the archbishop attack with e5 is the move to set problems for black. And at the club level, this is an absolute point machine. It's like playing pinball and getting goals all the time. But in this game, Steinitz decided to play a little gambit with the move cd4. Then after bishop b4, he played the Moller gambit with knight to c3. And the thing with the Moller gambit is that if you're playing, let's say, at a beginner level, like the 1400 level and below, this can get you lots and lots of points. And the reason why is that after knight takes e4, you can castle. And now most of these low-rate players don't know that you have to take with the bishop so that you can go d5 and kick the bishop away for an advantage. And what they do is instead they play the move knight takes c3. And then after takes, white gets a really great opportunity to actually get a winning position with best play. If you want to find out more about it, you can check out my Secret Energy of Chess course, which I've included in the description. So make sure to check that out for how to win from this position as white and how to play with the initiative. As it happens, though, this game is actually going to teach you about the Secret Energy of Chess as well, of how to effectively attack the enemy king, including when they do not follow the principles and leave the king stuck in the center for the whole game. Instead of taking the pawn, which is what black should do, he played the move d5, and d5 is asking for all sorts of trouble. Not because it's blundering a piece, because after all, you can't take with the knight because of the pin here. But nonetheless, the question remains, how exactly would you deal with the threat of knight takes c3 in this position? Alright, the answer is, do a little drum roll here, that we can actually ignore the threat. That's the way to take the initiative, to say, your threat, whatever, I'll just ignore it because I'm going to beat you even if you play it anyway. So white played the move castles in this position. And the point is that now if black grabs the pawn, he gets into all kinds of hurt. If knight takes c3, takes, and if bishop takes c3, well, here is where we bring out the tactics. Queen b3, go and have choke on that rook. So then we have takes, bishop f7, and now that king gets caught in the crossfire. King f8, bishop to a3, black's only move is knight e7, but then white can play a few different moves to win, but the simplest is just to capture. And then we're going to play rook e1 and just completely destroy black by taking here and winning the queen. Even though black has two moves, he's completely tied up, and the black piece are all ready for the next game, to put him back in the box. So instead, black could have perhaps tried a move like bishop c3, and that might have been the best try, going for castles to get that king off that e-file before a nasty check comes. If black takes here, it's just suicide, queen b3, and I thought you learned a lesson from the previous variation we just looked at, but apparently not black. Well, Bardeleben decided to play the move bishop to e6, And I still remember having my great predecessor's book open because at that time, like, it didn't occur to me, oh, I can just use my laptop and ChessBase to teach a lesson, which is something that I realized I could do a little bit later in my coaching career. But this time I was sort of trying to go really old school and say, yeah, I'm going to like bring out the book and like have the board. Because I wasn't sure if I could absolutely remember this game perfectly at the time, although like 90% sure. So I sort of had the book there just to kind of make sure and check with Kasparov's great notes. And in this position, actually, White's best move is not the move that Steinitz played. Because when you sort of see the world champion, it's very easy to get all deferential and say, oh, he's the world champion, of course this move was the best one. But nowadays with the computers, we can now pick them apart and say, oh, what about this move? What about that one? Stockfish gives +5 for that. You only played +3. Oh dear. Well, in the game, the move Bishop G5 did give White a better position, but I'm not satisfied with an advantage. I want to get the win here. And the move Rook E1 would have been the way to get a very monstrous position. Because the problem for Black is that if you do take with Knight C3, well, you can't take the Bishop because now I've played Rook E1 and pinned you. But if Bishop C3, then we bring the Bishop in with Bishop G5 and we say, you know, let's just keep developing with tempo. You can only take one of my rooks at a time. So D5, piling that pressure against this Bishop here. And Black doesn't really have a good solution because if you play Bishop E1, White will simply take and be hitting that Bishop here, which still is unable to move out of the attack. And after castles and FE6, D6. Now, if you were mistaught the material values, like say it's 6 years old, you were taught, oh, the bishop is worth 3 points, the rook is worth 5 points, pawn is 1. But those aren't the real material values, because when you have two bishops like this, I value it as being worth 7 pawns worth. And if you look at the rook as 5 and the pawn as 1, well, it's clear White is way ahead in material, and has a monstrous initiative with the bishops raking down the board. So instead of going into this, well, instead Steinitz decided to play a weaker move of Bishop G5. But at least he is trying to develop with tempo, so we give him part marks for that. And probably the best move for Black is just to go Queen D7. And I mean, White definitely still has a pretty strong initiative, but you can play Knight D5. And then to move Queen B3 is a pretty cool way to keep up the pressure. I mean, you can't go Rook E1 yet because the bishop is covering, unfortunately. But, I mean, if they were to take, then you'd have like D5 and, you would be able to overload the knight that is defending the bishop, which is pretty handy here, especially when the Black King is still stuck in the center. But if they take the knight instead, then, you get the bishop pair advantage. And even though I kind of rubbished the bishop pair in a previous video, it's actually a pretty big advantage in an open position like this. Castles, Rook D1, and, life is good here. You can even push a bit later if you want. So, that was still a better move, though, than Bishop E7. Because after Bishop E7, well, at this point, Steinitz showed his strength here, playing the move Bishop takes D5. Now, it might seem a bit weird to trade off the pieces when you have the attack, but actually the trades help White improve his position, because after Knight D5, well, Bishop G5 and Rook E1 is pretty nasty, checking the king before it can castle. Because remember, the king can't castle out of check, kids. But after Queen D5, Bishop E7, Knight takes E7, and now the very important move, Rook E1. Well, now we see the problem for Black that, if only Black could, cheat here and play castles and put the rook on E8 instead of F8, well, then Black's position would be perfectly fine. But, Steinitz would not let Black live with such a cheating attempt. So instead, what Black did was he tried to play the move F6 and say, well, I'm going to create a little hidey hole for my king on F7 and just castle by hand, because that's what the cool kids do. Well, at this point, actually, this is where Steinitz had a little opportunity, which, well, the move he played was perfectly good. He played Queen E2, but I think that the move of Queen A4 might have been even more precise. The idea being that, if you play a move like Queen D7, trying to defend a knight, prepare castling, well, I can go Queen B4, and you see that this pawn is under fire, and obviously losing the pawn is not what the doctor ordered. But if you play a move like C6 trying to defend, we hit with a nice tactic that you're welcome to try and find for yourself. Remember, look at all checks and captures is what they say in the combination books. And now we have Rook E7, Queen E7, and the other rook takes its place. And, we simply win the queen, because obviously the pin is quite real here. So the game could have ended like that, but instead Steinitz played Queen E2 and played Queen E2. Black played Queen D7. And here, actually, this is a point where Steinitz has to choose, well, where should I put my rook? Because this rook is the one piece that's not really doing anything in white's position at the moment. He ended up playing rook a-c1 and putting the rook on the open file. In fact, it would have been much better to play rook a-d1. You might be wondering, well, what is the difference? Well, one difference is that you put the rook opposite the opponent's queen. And you might think, but Max has a pawn in the way. There's no way that that rook is ever going to be touching that black queen in the rest of the game. But you would be surprised. You see, let's say black tries a move like king f7, finally connecting the rooks and entering the middle game. But here is where we hit them with a little spoiler, the little magic trick learned from the school of combinational play, where you get your certificate from Adolf Anderssen direct from his grave. Well, now we have queen to c4, and you don't have queen d5 to trade the queens, because then I will remove the defender and thank you for the chips. But after knight d5, this is where you might think, well, black has done all the right positional things. He's got the knight on the juicy outpost, blockading the d-pawn. His queen is defending, and then he's going to grind out an endgame winning 87 moves using Nimzovich as my system. But while black is pontificating like this, we played a combination knight e5. Say thanks for the game. Because after takes and takes, well, you don't have time to save your precious knight on d5, because now e6 is threatening to win the queen with a little fork. And so after queen e6 and captures, well, it lights out for black. So that's the way that white should have played it, using a bit of that combinational vision that Steinitz had inherited from being a pupil of Adolf Anderssen. But instead he played rook ac1. Luckily for him, Bart Ehrlein fell asleep at the wheel. Maybe he was partying a bit too much, had a bit too much booze before this game, or I don't know. I mean, he was a duke, so he certainly had a lifetime supply available. Or was he a baron? I think he was a baron. I'm thinking of the Duke of Brunswick playing against Morphy. And in any case, the baron decided that, that rook is being a bit annoying, so I'm going to play c6 and try to block the rook from having any activity. But in fact, the move king f7 was the correct continuation, with actually the position being about equal in this case, as black will be able to consolidate by bringing the rooks to the center and putting the king to safety from there. And we see that the move queen c4 doesn't have the desired effect anymore, because now if you try to play knight e5, well, the difference is after takes, you don't have the rook on d1 anymore, and black will simply block e6 and be a piece up. So you can sort of see the comparison method in full force. It's not just used by Jakob Ogard, but if it had been used by von Bardeleben, then he wouldn't have been such a sore loser after the game. In any case, I guess I gave away that black went on to lose, but, the world champions always win. Like, every single game they win because they're world champions, right? So, a world champion lose a game at chess, it's absolutely unheard of. But okay, these jokes aside, after c6, this is where you have a chance to show your ability to play with the initiative, to harness the secret energy of chess the way that Yoda harnessed the Force to defeat all evil with his mind without even having to do anything, just purely by thought. Think about that's kind of what chess is like. All we're doing is pushing wood, but it's not sort of hides the sheer power and genius of our brilliant combination. So what would you play here as white? Now, the key lesson here is strike when the iron is hot. If you pause, if you hesitate, it's kind of like, when you see the girl, like, if you don't sort of hesitate too long and you don't sort of ask for the date and be brave, well, by then, she might have found a new guy and you'll be left still, in the basement watching YouTube videos for the rest of your life on your own. But instead, well, by taking the initiative and playing d5, well, now we rip open the position. We've got all the floodgates coming in. Obviously, black can't take with the queen or with the knight. Well, you can take with the queen if you want to get home to the football game early. But instead, after c takes d5, we see that now we have cleared a beautiful outpost with knight to d4. Just look at this knight. It's completely unobstructed by the other black pieces, because we can jump over them anyway. We had the move king f7. The knight sinks into the beautiful outpost knight e6. It's called the octopus, where there are two types of octopus in chess. There's the monster knight on the 6th rank, trying everything in sight, and the other octopus is Garry Kasparov, because he sees every single combination and just leaves no hope for the opponent to survive. At least that's what Tony Miles said anyway, because this was before the computers were around. In any case, black played the move rook 8 c8. He realized that allowing rook c7 and letting that blind pig come on the 7th rank would lead to all kinds of disaster. The pig is meant to be on the Christmas table, eating it, not eating us. But in any case, after rook 8 c8, white played the move queen to g4. piling up that pressure against the pawn on g7. Unfortunately, black doesn't have the move of knight g6 to defend, because, hey, loose pieces drop off. Knight g5 discovers a check and attack to win the queen like that. So, von Bardeleben, putting on his little baron hat, played the move g6. And then after king knight g5, he said king 8 and said, come to me, humble servants. Let's trade some pieces and have a diplomatic relations where I win the tournament and go down as the greatest baron of all time. Unfortunately, though, Steinitz had some other ideas. And just when you might think, okay, black has got some attacks, he's going to try and trade some pieces and win the endgame, Steinitz said, what endgame are you talking about, baron? And he played the move rook takes e7. Bam, it looks like a tactics puzzle. Well, it is, because Steinitz played a brilliant combination. This is one of the most brilliant, beautiful games of the 19th century. And when you see this combination play out to the end, you're going to see why. So, just skating up here, because if black plays queen e7, we go rook to c8 with a check. And after takes, we have another check. So, sorry, you're not going to get your back rank checkmate with queen e1 black. And if black takes with the king, what happens then? Well, seems like the only other move, right? White has a few ways to slice the pie. I think the simplest way is just to play rook to e1. If you want to, you could play queen b4 first. You can figure out how it wins if you want. Well, black can run with the king with king to d6 because, well, obviously you don't want to put your queen on pre, but if you play king d8, that's kind of what happens anyway after knight e6. And then peekaboo, we have another discovered check with knight c5, and, well, that's all she wrote. But after king d6, well, here is where we have to be a little bit precise. So how do we play the king hunt and make sure that it's black's king roasted on the spit for Christmas dinner? Well, the answer is the move queen to b4. So we just keep hunting this king, not giving him any respite. If they try to run with king to c7, we keep going with knight e6. And if you play king c6, well, you get mated in 1. And if you play king b8, then we find another move, the only winning move in the position. Steinitz had to figure this all out all the way back when he played his move of knight to g5 and rook e7. That's how far ahead he calculated. So then we have queen to f4, a very powerful check from this front. And after rook c7, knight c7, well, if this happened in the game, I think that Kurt would have resigned. Because if you were to take the knight, well, then rook e8 is checkmate because of the pin. I mean, look, that rook on 8 didn't even get out of the game. I mean, it may as well have stayed in the box rather than being set up. But as it was, black came up with a different defense, where instead of taking the rook, he played the move of king to f8. And you might think, what, has he forgotten to take his medications? But look at all 4 of the white pieces are on pre, and black is actually threatening checkmate with rook c1, which is why you can't just take the queen on d7 here. So what was the next move that Steinitz played in this genius combination? Well, he played the move rook f7, doing a little staircase with the queen, with the rook rather, going for a little stairway to heaven thing, even though the song hadn't been written at the time this game was played. Well, black realized queen f7, rook c8 is coming with a check again, so we had king g8. And now Steinitz showed his brilliance once again, playing the move of rook to g7, continuing this staircase rook, because if you were to take that rook with the king, well, then queen e7 comes with a check and the house falls. But if you play queen g7, again, rook c8, and, well, you are simply a piece up with a very, very easy win. And since king f8 is not really an improvement because of knight h7 and I will pre-move queen d7 and check your king, well, then we had king to h8. And this is where we continue with the staircase rook, where, we see the rook taking its little sort of venture. I don't know, those of you who watch Marvel, you can come up with some story of, how Tony Stark or, Spider-Man or some other character, Doctor Strange, came up this memorable journey representing the rook. Well, in any case, Steinitz played the move rook h7, and now if von Bardeleben had played one more move, he could have avoided being victim to a miniature that would have been written all around the tournament. But instead he decided to have a moment of weakness, and this moment of weakness ensured that he would go down in history as a sore loser. So I guess he got his fame, but he should have been careful what he wished for. Because what he did was he realized that, well, he's going to lose, but he said to Steinitz, or didn't say it, but he thought, I'm not going to let you have the satisfaction of playing out your beautiful 15-move combination of checkmate. So what he did was he stormed out. He grabbed his score sheet. And he stormed out of the tournament, left the hall, and never was to be seen again. He never played another chess game. This was his retirement game. And when Steinitz came back, he was sitting there. He was tapping, saying, when's this dude going to come back? And then some hours later, he found a note saying, I resign this game, Mr. Steinitz. I am still a baron, and you are still a mere pauper, playing chess and struggling to make a living. But, okay, I am embellishing a bit, but you get the idea that Von Delbin wrote a note saying that he resigned. Or at least, I'm not going to finish this game. But in any case, what would happen if the game had continued? Well, obviously, Queen H7 and Rook C8 is obviously decisive. But what if Black plays King G8 instead? Well, let's see how that plays out. After King G8, White now plays the move Rook to G7. Again, with the same idea as before, but the difference is that now there's no pawn on H7, and White can use that to have the Queen and Knight, the best attacking combination in the game, to win here. We have Queen to H4. I mean, it's like, Rocky and Andrea, they complement each other perfectly. It's the same with the Queen and Knight. We had King G7, Queen H7, bringing the Queen in with the tempo. We can see this King is getting hunted all around the board. We do a little staircase with the Queen. A staircase with the Rook wasn't enough. We needed to bring the Queen in as well. She wanted a piece of this action. So we had Queen to G7. Black's most tenacious defense is to play King to E8. We continue our little staircase maneuver with Queen G8. Now King inching closer and closer. And the King says, no, I have some repellent here. But the Queen says, I call your bluff. Queen to D7, F7 rather. And now the King can choose which way he would like to be checkmated. If he goes to D6, we capture and we give checkmate like this. And the more fun way is the epaulette mate with King D8, Queen to F8, Queen E8, and now checkmate in 2 with Knight F7, King D7, and Queen to D6. Now you might be wondering why it's called the epaulette mate. It's because you have like the kind of epaulette sort of on your shoulders. But as it turns out, the reality is the King thought he was being knighted and was going to take the bounce to the material. But instead, as the sword was being put here, well, it's cleaved off his head instead. So there you are. That was sharing with you how Steinitz beat the arrogant, pompous baron who didn't even have the sort of good, chivalrous spirit to resign or for that properly, or for that to let Steinitz show his brilliant combination. But unfortunately, the commentators all did it, and the result was that had Von Delbin simply just resigned and, just played it out in a normal game and not made a fuss, well then maybe we wouldn't be showing this game right now and telling the story of this baron. So the lesson is learned. Be careful what you wish for. You may get your fame by striking a hissy fit after a brilliant combination, but it will come at a price. With that being said, I hope that you really enjoyed this video and you guys are able to relive the experience of me delivering my first paid lesson showing a different chess game when I was still a teenager. Of course, now I'm a bit wiser and the engines are a bit stronger, but still the same spirit. In any case, if you like this, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment with your thoughts on the game. As always, I really appreciate your support and your feedback. It would mean the world to me if you can subscribe as well to follow my content and be updated, be the first to know when I release my next training video. Also have a special opportunity as well in the description where you can click on that link and find out more about how to improve your chess as quickly as possible. With that being said, congratulations on completing the training and I will see you in the next video, chess improvers.